And he was like, "Hey, want to do some podcasts?" And I was like, "I'm looking for a coin guy. Let's go." The future's a mystery, but what the heck is new in history? Today I'm here with an enthusiastic guest, Dean Kinzer. And this is so awesome because he's from Kinzer Coins. It was very serendipitous. I've been wanting to, have a coin person, expert to be part of our podcast, not just for what's new in history, but for fan of history, the regular episodes. And just out of the blue, by the power of Zeus, I got an email from Dean, and he was like, "Hey, want to do some podcasts?" And I was like, "I'm looking for a coin guy. Let's go." So we're going to do a bunch of different episodes. Today's going to be our first one. It's going to be a bonus episode / what's new in history. And I'm going to introduce you to Dean, and he's going to talk about ancient coin collecting and about ancient coins. We've talked about them on our regular narrative back when coins were invented in 600 BC. And coins are super cool, but I'm not going to steal any of Dean's thunder. We're going to let him talk about that. But Dean is also a very interesting guy. He's a military vet from the 101st Airborne.
Oh, that's correct,
Any
sir.
of our international listeners, the 101st Airborne is a pretty elite group in the United States Army. He served overseas, including in the Iraq War. He's also a big history nerd like most of us, a lot of us listening here. So we're going to have a lot of fun here talking about ancient coin collecting. I'm just going to throw it right over to him, and I'm not even going to ask an introductory question. We'll just let us hear about it, Dean.
Thank you so much, Bernie, and thank you so much for having me on. I love history, so that's kind of my bread and butter. And anytime I get an opportunity to talk to somebody about history, I'm all in. It's interesting you mentioned my experience in Iraq. If I only knew then what I knew now,
Wow.
I passed through Babylon, right, the gates, and spent about a month in Baghdad on the ground war. And then we secured Baghdad. And then I spent about a year in Mosul, which
Wow.
is Nineveh, right? I mean,
Right. It's like Assyria.
oh my gosh. And so, if I had known then, I would have had much more appreciation for it than I did. Obviously you're a little distracted by what's going on, but
Right.
that really kind of helps me solidify my interest, right? Because I have been, and I do understand that, the world is a little bit older than 1776,
Yeah.
and I really get interested by it. My father was a coin collector, a collector of many things. Probably would have made a fantastic episode of Hoarders. And I don't say that in a way that is facetious. I will tell you that when he passed and I had to part with his estate, I sold 42 cars in one day, but not like 66 GTOs or 66 Chevelles. He was a big Yugo guy, so he had 13 Yugos. He had Fiats, Saabs, Studebakers, Jensens, just a random mix of things that
Niche, though.
interest.
That's a niche for sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not a popular one.
Yeah.
And so, and as he got older, they started to deteriorate and stuff like that. So, I still have one of his cars, a 51 Studebaker he actually bought from the original owner way back in 1990. And we still keep it going. It's got about 56,000 miles on it. So it's almost new. But so his kind of big collecting is what brought me in. When I was a kid, I was easily fascinated by baseball cards because there's checklists and numbers and stuff that you can kind of organize in your head. And coins, just as much. He was a baseball card dealer, a coin dealer.
Okay.
So we got into American coins, and I had my red book, and I would check off all the Lincoln cents and Buffalo nickels that I had. And then, of course, I grew up, joined the Army, started a family, and then as he got closer to the end of his life and I start parting with some of his stuff, I came across something I knew he had but had never really explored. And he had a number of ancient coins. He had shekels of Tyre. He had A lot of he was very fond of Christopher Columbus, the story behind that. So he had a lot of Spanish coins from the late 1400s. He had tribute pennies, widows' mites, pretty much anything biblical that you could collect. And then he had kind of a random assortment of Marcus Aurelius Astericius and various others. So as I was parting with it, of all of the things, it wasn't the Yugos. It was the ancient coins that really were hard to part with, because it was shocking to me. I knew that they existed, but it's still kind of mind blowing to this day that you can own something that old, and generally they're in better condition than you might expect, and they're oftentimes in the artistry and what has been done to make those is so phenomenal that it's kind of shocking to the mind. Not that the ancient Greeks and Romans didn't make beautiful art, but we're talking large scale production, right? Not one offs. One David, one big giant piece of art. We're talking about mass production, generally done by hand and struck. So each coin is kind of unique in and to itself. Not one is circular. Everyone has a little different shape to it. And then as I started to kind of peel back a little bit more, you start to learn about what the coin signifies, right? And to me, the coins, what we have on our coins signify America and things of that nature. But it was the same thing 2,000 years ago. And oftentimes, the best way to represent your message as a leader to the public. So oftentimes, those coins will have some version of a story that's going on. You're talking a lot about ancient Greece. And obviously, one of the big things ancient Greece was city-states, right? It was individual cities, and each one of them wanted to legitimize their money. They wanted to be the U.S. dollar or an effective dollar, so to speak, of the time. And so they would represent their coinage with images that were specific to that city, and oftentimes represented on the back, similar to what we have today, like magistrates on the back, who's responsible for that. But it's kind of an appeal to the city. Look at us, our money is worthwhile. And so you start to get into the stories of what the coins actually represented, and a lot of that is very powerful. It's not just kind of thoughtless things. It's very specific. And in some cases, if you get into architecture and other things of that nature, there are examples of things that don't exist anymore on these coins. One of the neat ones that I always like to talk about, there's a coin, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head where it's from, but it has a silphium plant on it. A silphium
Oh yeah, I
plant,
remember that. I actually
yeah,
covered that. It's right. I know exactly what you mean.
yeah, and so the silphium plant doesn't exist anymore. And legend has it, or the story of it is that it was an aphrodisiac, kind of I would call the Viagra of the day. And so that city represented that. And of all the people in all the world in all of time, the person that people say is solely responsible for making that product extinct or using the last of that product is Nero. And so that product's extinct, and similar architecture. There's a lot of ancient architecture that's represented that doesn't exist anymore. So it's just
I think they regrew. I think they found that silphium or something. I know the coin. You're right, because that's the only way they knew that it wasn't a store. Like that, it's true.
right.
Like they didn't know if there was actually such a real plant. I think
Yeah,
pretty sure it's northern Africa.
yeah, that's right. Kyrene.
It's like a celery. It's like a wild celery type of thing.
Yeah, Kyrene. I think is Kyrene is the city that it
That's
comes
right,
from.
Cyrene. Right.
Yeah,
That's exactly right. I remember. Then that's the coin. They put that in all their coins. I think
yeah.
they've like found it.
I would that would be amazing.
I gotta
It
look for that.
probably.
It was. I think I probably have a "What's New in History" story backed up for them. Found that. Found
Ah, interesting. Well, I'm leading
Yeah.
in then.
So then, even like other things, like we know what people would look like, or like you said, the architecture. We could get a real visual of what a city wall would look like, and that
Yeah,
kind of
and
thing.
the other thing that really fascinated me about ancient coins was, um, as their propaganda, right, or as their storytelling from the people in charge, a lot of times you can track and trace rise and fall of empires based on the purity of their
Ah,
coinage.
uh-huh.
So you can, you go from the beginning of the Roman Empire, or I'm sorry, the Roman Republic. They started out with these giant, um, what's it called? Giant bronzes that were
Okay.
cast, oftentimes weighing 50 grams all the way up to 280 grams. Giant coins oftentimes had Minerva or Janus on the front, and then a ship's prow on the reverse to fund basically the Punic Wars or their establishment. But as time went on, they became gold heavy, silver heavy, with pure gold and pure silver. And then as you go into the empire, continues, but the purity starts to diminish over time. And what was once was silver becomes bronze with silver coating.
Hmm.
And then what became silver coating becomes just bronze. And then the coins themselves, as you go into third, fourth, fifth century beyond, they start to degrade in quality. The legends and the images are much poorer, and you can tell that Rome is in a serious decline. And then eventually ending, and so that story can be told just on a timeline of coins, and you can do that even more specifically with like the fall of the republic, because a lot of times the people in power use that to say, hey, I'm the guy in charge. And so it's not just the commodity. It's not just that it's old. There's a story behind each one of them, and those stories are still being learned today. The Roman Empire was vast. We know that. There's tons of provincial coins with local cities that minted them with different emperors on the obverse, and then there's city representation on the back. Um, and each one of those will tell a story. It's just it's mind-boggling how far you can go, but
Yeah.
it's so enjoyable to me. It's like
It's amazing that
it's
you
like
can get it.
learning.
So like let's start from the start of coins a little, right? Like what are coins? Because it's funny because we talked about it, and but this, let's pretend like for anybody who doesn't understand, money is a complicated thing in general. In our
Right,
current society, we have paper bills. $100 bill and a $1 bill is basically the same material.
right,
And when you were talking about the quality of the coins, the amount of silver and all, I think as for the modern mind, let's remind ourselves and everybody else, because you think of it all the time. But the coin, like today's coin represents an idea of this much money, but those coins actually represented an amount of value,
right.
the value of the metal,
Yeah,
which in a way is still just, what's a piece of
construct.
gold worth? It's not as worth as much as a hammer if you need a nail, put a nail in, but you could pay somebody with that gold to hammer the nail down for you.
That's
But it
right.
still wasn't a representative of something. It was actually gold. And I think the way I figured it out in my analogy in my mind, um, when I was learning this, is that basically before there was coins, maybe somebody would say, this is an ounce of gold. You kind of had to have a scale, and you kind of
Right.
had to make sure it was real. When I was a kid, we used to watch Underdog. You're probably younger than me.
Yeah,
We
no,
used to
no.
bite, I used to bite the
Yeah.
coin to see if it was real or not. I must think, what the hell is that? We didn't, but that was because even before, because even for thousands of years until our time, coins were actually, a value of precious metal. So the
Right.
first coins were in Lydia, right? And they were a mix, I think. Let's see, tell me if I'm wrong after. They
So
were,
the first
go
the
ahead.
first coins come out of Western Turkey, Ionia, right?
Yeah, Lydia. Yeah, the
Yeah, yeah,
Lydians. Yeah,
yeah,
Croesus.
and
It's
right,
Croesus's
right.
father, Aietes.
Yeah,
Alietes, I believe.
yeah. So there,
I
I
think there's
mean,
a cryptocurrency called Alietes.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Well, that's
because when I
clever.
was researching Alietes, I found that. So they invent,
So,
and they actually were made out of electrum, which is like gold and silver.
right,
And
and they,
interestingly, it's possible that way back the first coin was actually a little bit of a scam. We're not sure. They may not have been as pure as they were supposed to be, but because that's how you could make some money. But I'll get to that. But basically, so if this was an ounce, I'm just saying an ounce. Obviously, that wasn't the way. But if this piece of gold is an ounce, I have an official, a government agency or stamps this saying this coin is that, but they put a picture on it. And those
That's right.
first coins were very simple, right? They didn't really even have a back.
They started out as globs of electrum.
That's right.
I think probably around 650 as they were starting to figure out. The interesting thing about the electrum is they're not sure if that was naturally occurring or if it was a mix, because at
Okay.
the time, or how you make electrum is a mix of gold and silver.
Okay.
And so there are some people that think that was naturally occurring in that area, and that's why they used it.
Right.
Uh, but they were globs, right? Little round balls, basically, just a weight of, this electrum that had value. And then probably the next day, somebody counterfeited it. And because it was so easy to make. And
Yeah.
so you can watch the development of protecting yourself against counterfeiting very early on. So the globs went to like striations where they would put 3 lines across or 4 lines across. So it's harder to counterfeit.
Okay.
And then they made the reverse incuse, like a stamp, um, to make it very hard or harder for counterfeiters to replace, but also gave you a look inside the metal to kind of get some kind of
Oh, because it
idea of
has that
what's.
square in the back and you could see
Yep.
inside of it.
Yeah, like a punch. They just punch the back.
Right.
Hard to replicate the way that they would do it, probably for at least a week or two. And then they would, what's it called? Try to manipulate it so that, or use it so you could also see what's kind of inside the coin.
And that's
Um,
interesting you think of it too, because we would think of a counterfeit like to make it look like $100 bill. You'll still be paper.
yeah, that's
But
right.
this, you wanted to just see what's inside of it because basically you're just saying that this piece of gold weighs as much as I say it weighs.
That's right. That's right.
And then started making it, getting a little more fancy. And I think the other thing that's interesting that people should know is and understand is those first coins weren't like you couldn't go and buy like play a video game. I
No,
don't even think of that, but like you couldn't even buy a loaf of bread with it. It was more for like a month's pay. It was
right.
more like that. It wasn't like there was these coins all over.
Stores of wealth, right? So,
Yes.
do you think of, if you think about how, how people interacted in the marketplace, particularly in the early days, they did make smaller denominations a little later, to like an obol or something like that, which was like a day's wage of a little tiny bit of silver, or they have different versions of the obol, and sometimes people are like, holy cow, how many coin versions did the Greeks come up with? Um, but they a regular coin of electrum was used in trade or building infrastructure or paying troops. So it's not you dig it out of your pocket
Yeah.
and use it at a market or something. It's more for moving, or moving your country forward, or trade or shipbuilding and stuff like that. And then, obviously, who we mentioned, King Midas, Croesus, he took that and started to make denominations, essentially, smaller and bigger stores of wealth in each one of those. And he's also a person that very early on invested in dyes, right? Somebody that made images on the coin. So now they're not just these, striated globs or something like that. They have images on them, which is much harder to replicate, and also gave people a visual example of where the coin was from. So if you were around in that time and you did get a coin, and it did have, Lydia's traditional bull, kind of facing each other, you knew who it was, the bull and the lion, right? You knew who that came from. And that's, representative. One, Croesus, the richest man in the world, is backing this, right? This is something he made or his area made, so there's confidence in the coinage, and I think really that probably helped propel coinage into what it became later
Yeah.
on.
Just so convenient too. I mean, it must have been a lot hard. I remember we did one episode where the Assyrians invaded the Arabs. They
Hmm.
had so many camels that like a camel, you could buy a beer like a camel. Because there was just so, but it's so inconvenient to carry a camel to buy a beer, especially if you're going to buy a round for your buddies.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's
you need a
right.
couple of them.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
or it
And
was a
then
lie. I forget how it was, but basically a camel wasn't worth as much anymore because there was just so many damn camels.
it's probably
So,
true.
so the fascinating thing I think from not just about to nerd out about the money and all. And then it started, and how they started to change, and coins were, like you said, were all these things. But now, like, getting to so you would think, like, oh, for me to have a coin from 500 BC or 400 BC, or that must be like, I don't even have a coin from 1800. So where I wouldn't have that kind of a coin, it must be in a museum. But
Right.
that's not really true, right? You can actually acquire these things.
Yeah, they're readily available. Much one of the things that as I was getting into this is I feel like America has not been awakened to this insofar as the Europeans, they're a part of that history, right?
Yeah.
So for a guy from England, if he chose to on a rainy day, he could go out and metal detect and might find something from the 13th century or might
Mm.
find something from the Celts. It's possible, and actually their country kind of encourages you to kind of metal detect because they're a
Yeah.
participant, right? But Americans don't really have that, and it's interesting because our money started out as foreign money, right? I mean, our dollar was the Spanish dollar. um,
Okay.
so I mean, it's interesting. So there's a natural kind of bring back to that, and I really want to connect those dots. So yes, readily available. Ancient coins have been uh, kind of dug out of the ground or identified for the last 2,000 years. Money's meant to travel. So a lot of the coinage that was made in specific city states in Greece might have made its way to the Celts, like we talked about, might have made its way anywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's not what I would consider like a specific country's ownership or something like that. It's global trade. And that's why I like coins because it's it's something that everybody can relate to. Nobody owns the dollar; everybody has a dollar, right?
Right.
And that's why it's great. And so within the coin world, ancient coins are a part. I wouldn't say they're the leading force, but there are a number of corporations that do auctions, heritage auctions, CNG auctions, Stax Bowers. Those guys all do some version of an ancient coin auction, and they're available to Americans. Those are local American uh, consigners and sellers that are advertising those. But beyond that, there's a world of dealers that have these coins that have had them in the states for a long time, and so we've been trading in that, and that's really the point is that my natural inclination is the love for history. But my experience as an American has been if you like history, you go to an antique store, or maybe you get one of the fancy ones in New York that go a little further back. But my experience has not been I go somewhere and pick up something 2,000 years old. My
Not in
experience,
America. Yeah.
yeah, my
It's just
experience
not the
is
way it is here. Yeah.
if you go to Greece, you can visually see that and connect to that, but you can't bring it back with you. Um, but here's a way you can. And honestly, my experience with ancient coins has been such that usually when I hand somebody something from the time of Constantine the Great, I probably give out more of those coins than anything. It kind of awakens something in people. It feels like, wow, this is bigger than me, and who's
Yeah.
held this? Where did
I
this
would go. I
go?
would be out the chills.
Yeah, it's enlightening, right? It makes you feel connected, and then to understand that history is a part of your history, then it kind of it kind of brings out excitement. So my primary purpose has been to evangelize these, to get the conversation out to the American public, because you could I have no problems with people collecting American coins. I have no problems with people collecting Funko Pops or whatever the interest is. We all have a bunch of different things that we're interested in, but history has always been probably my first and foremost passion, and I have not found a better way to connect it than these ancient coins.
Convenient too. Like I said, I was telling you before, I'm going to move to Spain. Like, if I had a nice ancient coin collection, I could take that with me.
Yeah, that's
My
right.
fake, the thing that my Ashurbanipal, I think it's Shernasserpal, fake thing, whatever I got in a museum. I don't know if I'm going to take that with me. Those little things like that, or my fake Greek vase. It's a little hard to travel.
Oh
or
yeah.
any antiques, but a coin, yeah, you could definitely carry those around. And travel is so just in general, like you say, how I travel and go around. Like, okay, I'm sitting at my desk. I have a dime, 10 cents. Let's see. All right, my eyes. I can't see the date on it, but it looks like maybe the 70s. So just in my head, you pick up a coin like since the 1970s, people have been tossing this dime around. I don't know how many hands that's been in. So I'm sure it's not the same because they didn't, have dimes in their pockets, but still in all, an ancient coin. And it's not like it got, it's okay. So let's say this dime, they stopped making it like this. And then eventually it will be old. He probably wouldn't be in circulation anymore. But these coins were actually gold. So they could have been in circulation for hundreds of years.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
Boy, you just sparked a bunch of things in my head. One of the most interesting coins to me is Mark Antony's denarius, the
Okay.
ships. And it's interesting because I think it was probably one of the longest coins in circulation in history. So
Okay.
about 200 years, you could still use those. They were frequently used during Marcus Aurelius's time. And he actually made a coin as a tribute to that. And it's so interesting because Mark Antony, not necessarily uh, probably had some ups and downs in terms of people's opinions of him. And one of the crazy things about, ancient history, particularly in Rome, is if they didn't like you, they'd make you disappear, right? So like Caligula, his coinage is harder to get, not because he was
Oh,
only in office for 4 years, but once he went away, they would make his stuff disappear. They would take away his statues. They would cross his name out of stuff.
yeah.
People who did not like him would cross his face out on
He was
coins.
canceled.
Yeah, he was canceled. Yeah, and for good reason. But
Yes, definitely.
um,
Oh,
but
these people canceling Caligula.
oh,
Oh, they
don't
took a
wait.
statue. They're ruining our history. Caligula, he's part of our history. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not making any political statements on that. I'm just
no,
saying
no,
that.
but
Joke.
we were canceling people way back when. But yeah, I mean that there's so many there's so many reasons. Um, then the other thing you have to think about is these coins not only survived just the next emperor or just the next couple of emperors, they also survived invasion. They also survived melting down from the next guy, right?
Yeah.
The obviously the starting number was a lot greater than it is now. But the fact that so much survives from back then, I mean, one of my probably most tearful moments in ancient history is 1204 when the Latins sacked Constantinople,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they basically melted everything down that they didn't take, including great works of art that could not be replicated, and melted them down into bronze coins, or whatever the commodity was. Um, and that kind of stuff happened frequently. I mean, as often as I know Rome only got sacked a few times, but many other cities got sacked a lot of times, and that coinage survived even that. So
Yeah.
it tells a great testament. The one other thing I want to mention is that if you have a great imagination and start to think about some of the specific coins, there are coins that may have, just based on the grandeur of them, like medallions. I had a 1.5 solidus of Constantine the Great that I bought. Um, Extremely rare, but that's a commemorative coin given out by either the emperor or somebody important to somebody important. And it's just mind boggling.
Yeah.
That would have been an award to somebody. They have these giant bronze medallions that are the
Yeah.
size of
We still do
Sestertius
that
coins.
today. I mean, I'm in the promotional products business. People give coins like they make a logo or like safety coins, and
Yeah,
apparently, they trade coins. They're not, they don't, I mean, I don't think they're gold. Maybe they are, some of them, but
yeah. But those are to celebrate certain events.
yeah.
Obviously Titus and Vespasian. When they built the Colosseum over or Nero, I think technically started, but over the course of that time, they did issue commemorative coins with the Colosseum on the back. Not a lot of them exist anymore, and that's a six-figure coin. But they made commemorative coins around building of the Colosseum, and that's something, if you have a deep pocket, you can definitely own for yourself.
Well,
And
since you brought it into it, I, I guess obviously we had to say about it, like how much, like it would seem like when you said six figures, you would think, well, God, they must all be, these are like museum pieces, but that's not really the case.
not at all. I mean, just harken back to what I told you. I give away Constantine the Great coins. Well, there's so many of them.
Oh,
You can buy Constantine the Great coins for 10, 15, $20. Um,
really?
yeah,
Oh, I'm gonna get
yeah.
one for Dan. I think Dan likes Constantine the Great. I'm not sure if you're listening, Dan. You don't know I was listening to What's New in History episodes, but I think I'll
Con-
get you one.
Constantine the Great era coins, late Roman bronzes, they call them, were obviously made in a huge flurry of different, because bronze doesn't really, the value of it is not like gold or silver.
Yeah.
Um, so they made, there are people that sell those in bulk for very reasonable prices, but it's a great entry point. I know
Yeah.
everybody in the world knows Constantine the Great. I mean, his effect on legalizing Christianity, and that's a great way for somebody who's not experienced ancient coins to connect in a very affordable way. I mean, if not for that, and I'm not saying that he was the special guy that was forward thinking with that, but it became because of him, right? And somebody who thinks of Christianity fondly, that there are a few things that can be more powerful than that kind of connection. You know what I mean?
Oh
But
yeah, for sure. It goes back to even like what you were saying about how they travel and how many years. I mean, I think I read it somebody saying how, I mean, just imagine you could have this coin where you could just this dime, all the people's hand might have been through. Imagine
that's
that
right.
coin. Like all the people's hand, an ancient coin, like something like just the thought of it, it could have been, a mercenary and a builder and just so many different people. There's so many eras. Gives you the
Absolutely.
chills to think about it. But
Yeah.
so why aren't they in like museums? A coin, like
Oh,
why would I be able to get a coin?
well, because they were minted in significant numbers.
Oh, okay,
In a lot of cases, I would say there are a number of scarcities that are museum only pieces, as far as I'm concerned. There's certain coins but believe it or not, museums have a pretty good inventory
okay,
of ancient coins, and all of them do. For every coin that you actually see at the Met, I am assuming there's probably 20 behind it, right?
okay.
So we're not a threat to museums. That stuff is frequently available. Museums oftentimes, with the right pedigree and stuff like that, will get involved to try to acquire a piece.
I
Um,
see.
but we're not dealing in stuff that somebody's going to miss out on because it's not
Yeah, it's
available.
not a black market type of thing. Because
No,
even
absolutely.
I think you told me the museums sometimes even sell them. They might have
Yeah,
100 of them, and they'll
they
just
they they have
keep 50.
excess inventory, and sometimes they have to raise funds, and
Yeah.
that's a good way to do it. So, and within ancient coins, there are organizations like the ANS, that are for that fostering of that relationship between coin collectors and museums. A lot of times they have collections available. I think, who is it that has the never mind. Sorry,
That's okay.
tried to go somewhere I couldn't remember.
I
But
do it all the
there
time.
there is a good relationship, or continue to build a relationship between academia, and coin collectors, and I think we both benefit each other. So we're not at odds. I'm not trying to grift sell my way on ancient coins. I want the same thing that they want. We want you to be interested in history. So it's not competing. It's a both. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And so like I know I used to like coins when I was a kid, American coins. I had
Yeah.
penny collection and mostly pennies. I thought so it was cool to find, to find them. Like, I found 1920 or the wheats, you used to get the wheats pennies. They were the old ones. But
Yep.
then in those days, then I got into it a little. I get into a lot of things. I have ADHD. But like, so okay, I'm looking at this dime now, and if I recall, like I'm sure that there's some lines missing. Like that's how you used to you grade them, right? You say like,
Yep.
okay, Abraham Lincoln's face, you should be able to see his cheek, and there should be four lines in here. But they don't really have the same thing with ancient coins, do they? Like like, they'd have a grade of each coin and a dime or a penny, but is that not the same for ancient?
So I think that one of the things that I like, I probably have talked about it a few times, is that American collectors are used to kind of a regimented uh, collecting style, right? So
Hmm.
there's a checklist, there's a book, there's a price guide. There's 10 different ways to evaluate the pricing of something or the grade of something. I would say one of the things that we have not gotten to yet in ancient coins is that strict level of regimentation. You can get your coins graded through NGC or ANACS, and they will, with their best knowledge that they have available, will grade, and they will, say that it's real. NGC does not stand by that. It's, even though the G is guarantee,
Hmm.
it's not for ancient coins. It's a little different. Um, but yeah, absolutely. So that's where it
It's not like they
becomes
have a
more
one
interesting.
to compare it to. You'd have a perfect penny,
Right.
and then you
What
could
are the
know, like, if
odds?
it doesn't look, you could grade down from there. But they really don't know. Even like, and also like I know in modern coins where if there's a mistake, that's when they're worth a real lot
Oh
of money,
yeah, yeah.
right? So if they print like the wrong color, or they, the 1943 penny, I think it is, right? That's worth
Right, right.
$15, and the double
Well,
struck ones and things like that.
if you like that kind of stuff, I can tell you there are plenty of that. There is plenty of that in the ancient world.
Huh.
One of the major ones is the brockage, where only
Okay.
one side of the coin comes up and the other side doesn't. So you could have Julius Caesar on the obverse and then the reverse of that on the reverse, because they didn't stamp both sides. Uh, there are also a number of mistakes, obviously, in dies, so you can find that level of
Oh,
detail.
okay. So then those would be worth more because they're more rare.
Well, in a world of rare, I don't know that I would say
Okay.
yes, but sometimes rarity becomes just rare, and it's a function of whether somebody wants it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the we talk about different areas to collect. I mean, one of the big things with me was completing the wheat penny set, right?
Yeah.
1909 to
Yeah. I think I have
1959.
mine. I think I still have it in my attic.
Yeah. Well, you're not limited in ancient world by that at all, right?
Yeah.
You there are areas that you can collect. Probus, who's part of that affordable area of the Constantine era where the coinage is not worth as much. He has a series of animals on the reverse of his coins. You can collect all those. One of the great things about Byzantine coins or Eastern Roman coins is they did put a date on the reverse, so
Oh.
you could get all of the coins of Justinian from the start of his empire to the start of his reign to the end of his reign,
Oh, wow.
because they would put the year of his reign on the back of the coin and where it was minted. So they actually became more like uh, obviously they had always had mint marks and things of that nature, but almost similar to American coins. And a lot of people start out in that kind of area, like Byzantine coins,
Okay.
affordable, not necessarily the most artistically pleasing, a little more crude, but beautiful nonetheless, and affordable and easy to put in collections that make sense to those of us who are, like you said, ADHD or need things in a specific order. There's a great appeal for that in those areas.
I wonder if people collected them in the old days.
Augustus definitely did.
Oh, wow.
He was a coin collector,
Oh, amazing.
and then if we went to more reading modern times, we talk about Teddy Roosevelt carrying around
Oh, yeah.
his.
Tell us about Teddy Roosevelt.
Well, I don't want to ruin the Athenian portion, but he definitely
Oh,
carried one
right. Yeah,
around.
we'll save that for that. I forgot that's on that. That's right. We'll save that for that. But
But
back to the price. So I can get like a Constantine bronze coin for 15, $20 or something.
yes,
But is that,
yeah,
there's
and I'm
other
not
ones? I
saying
mean,
like
is there like tons of different coins you can get for under $100? Is that a thing?
yes, and that's part of the reason to evangelize, right? Is because I feel like it's still very affordable. One of the areas that I think is really neat is Syria. During the empire, they created a Billion tetradrachm. So it's a nice mix of Greek coin with a Roman figure on the obverse and an eagle on the reverse.
Okay.
Those coins are big. They're like 26 millimeters, not like a dime, more like a quarter.
Okay.
Have great representations of the emperor's profile, and generally are in the range of $50 to $100. So, like, if you wanted to have every emperor from Septimius Severus to Hostilian in a tetradrachm form, you could do it very affordably.
Dan, you
Or,
need to do that. I should. I hope you're. I'm going to tell Dan would tell because Dan loves Rome.
oh yeah,
That would be cool. Dan, don't you think everybody would think that's cool to see all those Roman coins in your apartment in Stockholm? That'd be amazing.
yeah. That to me is what's appealing. And the reason I talk about it is American coins on the high end, or American baseball cards, or whatever you want to call it, on the high end is much higher than what it is on something that's 2,000 years older.
Oh,
So I'll help you. I'll help you understand a little bit. And this is one of my favorite stories to tell. One of the most expensive coins at auction for ancient coins. There's two. There's one that's more expensive, and it's from a Greek place that I cannot pronounce, and I don't even try.
yeah, I won't try either then.
The second is the Aureus from Brutus. Uh, and the Aureus from Brutus was minted in 42 BC when he was in Greece, getting ready to have his final showdown with Octavian and Mark Antony. And on the obverse of this Aureus, he has his bust. And that's unique. At that time, Julius Caesar was really the first. Mark Antony kind of jumped in, and Brutus did, but he was anti that. But he put his bust on the obverse, so you knew it was him. And on the reverse, there's two knives, and then the I forget what they call it, the ceremonial cap. And on below it, it says "Ide Mar." So essentially, what Brutus is saying is, 2 years after Julius died, remember who it was who killed him, who fought for the Republic, and issued that coin. Now, there's not a lot of them that survived. There's silver. There's maybe less than 100 of the silver ones. And there's 3 or 4 of the gold ones that are known. Some speculation on each one of them, but it went for $4 million. Well, I know, but think about what that means. Think about what that coin, there are probably no other coins that make more of a historical impact, or really kind of a big FU, than that coin. But that's the highest of the high end. The 1804 dollar, I think, is $10 million or something crazy. They only minted 100 of them or whatever. It's not even a comparison. So to me, the high of the high is still not even that high.
Right.
You know what I
I guess
mean?
some of them are priceless though, maybe.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you can, if you ever want to see an Eidmar coin, you can go to the Met, and they have one on display.
Yeah, the Met does have a lot of coins, actually.
Yeah.
The last time I was there, I looked at a lot of coins.
Oh, they
Really
have some
cool.
beauties.
Because some of them are so tiny, you don't realize how small a coin can. It's like a half a dime.
Oh, the fractionals, they're, I don't, like a pebble. I don't know how you would know the difference.
I think for history nuts, you really should, like, if you're really into history, you really should do have a little coin excursion. Like, you should study them a little to understand that, because you don't realize, like, these coins are tiny, or these are big, or they didn't hand them out like water. They were used for this. And I wanted to, we'll wrap it up, maybe. Well, a couple things before we wrap it up. First, like, what kind of a collection do you have available? You have a lot of different coins available. If somebody wanted to go to your website, right, they can get some of this stuff.
So basically, on my website, kinzercoins.com, I have essentially what I would consider, in large part, starter stuff. So, I'm not trying to break down your door and make you spend a lot of money on stuff. I just want you to get interested, right? So I have a lot of NGC graded coins, for beginners who feel like, hey, I don't know enough about this to know if it's real or fake. It's in a slab. I feel good about it. It's got all the information on it. So I have a ton of those, all the different emperors, pretty much from the beginning of the empire till later on. So you can go pick up a very fine or excellent Antoninus Pius denarius in a sleeve or in a plastic box, and be able to show it off pretty affordably. Wow. Then I have kind of next level, kind of stuff that interests me. A lot of the coins that I buy are for specific stories. One of the coins that I just bought was Didius Julianus. one of the most interesting emperors in history, bought the emperorship for from the Praetorian Guard
I
for
remember that guy. Yeah.
25,000 sesterces, and then was killed 66 days later by the same guard. So, I mean, that's a story you got to tell, right? And I have a sestertius of Didius Julianus, so I gotta represent that. So, I have an Antony and Cleopatra bronze coin, because who, doesn't get their socks knocked off by seeing, history's greatest lovers on one
Yeah.
coin together.
Wow.
Not to mention that Cleopatra is one of the most sought after images that you can get, right? Because she wasn't well known in terms of her looks. There's just not a lot of evidence of how she looked, and that's always a big question with people. She had a lot of coins. There are a lot of coins with her images on
Yeah.
it, so you can buy that.
She looks kind of like George Washington on them too. I don't know what the.
Well, you could tell she's a little Greek.
Yeah, for sure. She's beautiful. Oh, I'm
and then
kidding.
and then every once in a while reach for the stars and buy something big like a Sicilian tetradrachm or a decadrachm, which go up in the thousands significantly.
But
But
it's not on your
really,
website. We could check. I'm going to check. And if anybody wants to go on the website and buy me something, just send an email to Zinway at podcast@gmail.com and I'll give you the address. I don't want to dox myself online, but you could send me one. We do have to
yeah,
buy a coffee link, but you could also buy me a coin
that's
from
right.
Dean Kinzer. I will take it to Barcelona with me too, because I can definitely put that in my suitcase. I can carry it around. And
The
then go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, because I want no continue, please.
The other interesting, or the other thing that I do on the website, is I have two different areas that I like to direct people in. One is me and my good friend Josh Benevento do a podcast about ancient coins called the Ancient Coin Hour.
Okay.
And so we have a number of episodes about that. What we do is we have on people from the industry. So the owner of CNG, the director of Ancients at Heritage, Aaron Burke, who's a part of Harlan J. Burke. So you can get familiar with who the dealers are, who the people
Okay.
are in the business, and get some comfort. And they'll give you tips and tricks, if you wanted to buy and then sell, who do you do that through, all that kind of stuff. But it's purely educational. There's not marketing in it. I'm not trying to sell you my product. I'm just trying to talk about
Sure.
ancient coins. And so we have that. And then I have a resources page on my website that kind of directs you to, if you like ancient coins on jewelry, or if you like shipwrecks or stuff like that, there's resources there that you can find as well.
Okay. Well, of course, I'm going to link all that in the show notes, like I always do. I'm going to go through. I was on your website before, but I'm going to look again and just do a little shopping for myself too. I have a question, and I probably should have got it in there before, and if it's too off topic, or we could just forget it. But what about China? I thought China's coins were like not gold, if I kind of remember correctly, and they're more like representative of, and you needed a lot more of them.
They're cast, right? I think after you get past, now I'm not an expert, but I do
Okay.
know experts. But they do go back, but I think they're cast. I don't think they're in precious metals.
Yeah.
I think they're ring coinage, right?
Yeah, you had like a square in the middle. You had to knees a bunch of them.
Yeah. It's not. I wish it was it's an area that I'd like to learn more about, just like the Parthians, just like the Sasanians, all the different areas. But I'll get there. But yeah,
Yeah.
I have not ventured into that area too much.
But one day we'll nerd out with that. We'll get one of the
Yeah.
experts on. The three of us will do it. Because I had to learn a lot about China from our podcast, because
Oh, sure.
we just count everything. And when I
The-
started, we weren't really doing too good with China, but I got lucky and I started really finding good resources, and it's freaking fascinating Chinese
Oh, it
history
is.
too.
You know,
And it's just a little different, but it's a little the same.
I had a lady who works in marketing for CNG on Vera, and she's from China, and she spent quite a bit of time there, and then came over to the U.S. to kind of advance her career and stuff. But she told me that the most famed and the most respected ancient coin coin collector in China is a woman.
Okay.
And I was surprised by that. It's just one, that it's known, and two, it's not probably who you thought it would be. It's a very interesting.
We think
But
of us
they
guys
take
as
it
more
seriously
nerdy
there.
like that usually.
Yeah.
We think the fair sex is usually not into the nerdy stuff we are, I guess is what it is. It's not that we're being like sexist against it. We just think, oh, you're nerdy.
Traditional, right?
Yeah, it's really fascinating, Dean, and I hope the listeners like it too. That how you could actually acquire these ancient piece of history. I mean, it's literally like a museum. They're in museums, and you could have something like that's in a museum. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, that's just amazing.
One of the Whenever I get the chance, if I talk to somebody that's a really big like stoic or something like that, I
Okay.
try to get them to get a necklace. I partner with a guy that doesn't damage coins. He just puts them essentially in a pendant that melds around the coin.
Okay.
But if you wear that around your neck, it's an instant opportunity to talk about what you're
Yeah.
passionate about. And I've sold a few where they're the Giant's bronze sestertius, and it's staring you in the eye, and people are going to come up to you and ask you about it, and they're going to have their minds blown. There's no
Yeah.
way that anybody's going to be like,
Yeah. Right. I'm holding a 2,000-year-old coin on my neck. Amazing. Especially
it's
Americans, because we just don't have to go back that far.
no, no, it's mind blowing. And
It really is.
I will wear myself out telling people about how amazing it is.
Well, we'll have you
It's
on a
so cool.
lot then, because we're going to come back and talk. I hope we can do some more what's new in histories. You know what we should do? Maybe sometime when we see some like big coin finds and stuff like that,
Yeah,
we'll go over do some of those. Like we'll get maybe do a couple. We could do short episodes, talk about
whatever
the
you want,
coins, because
man.
I like to have an expert on. 'Cause
I
sometimes I
appreciate it.
just I don't know as much. Obviously, I'm just going by what the article says, so that'll be fun. And also, but
Yeah.
definitely, you guys got to check out his website for sure. And like I said, if you want to buy me a coin, you could do that. But seriously, buy it for your loved ones or for yourself. And definitely, if you're like I say, if you're a fan of history, listener, and you're into detailed history, and if you haven't gone down the coin rabbit hole, take a little time to go down the coin rabbit hole, because it's definitely a good it's a really, really, just a really interesting aspect of ancient history.
Yeah. If you got one more second, I'll tell you
Yeah, of
how
course.
easy it is when you actually have it in your hand. I had my ADT security guy come in yesterday, doing his door to door salesman stuff, and he saw that I was wearing my shirt, and he's what's Kinzer coins, and I sell coins or whatever. He said, oh, that's interesting, like American. No, no, older than that. And then at some point, I was like, okay, let me ask him. I said, are you Christian? Oh yeah, yeah, I'm a Christian. So I went over to my desk and grabbed a widow's mite, and I brought it to him, and he said, oh, this a widow's mite? I didn't know that was actually a coin, and I was like, yeah, and here's one for you to keep, and it blew his mind so much that one, I don't know if maybe he just never learned about the connection that it was actually a real coin, but then two, it's again, it's just wow, this is what Jesus talked about in the Bible, um, and it's real and it's in your hand, and
Oh, it's the coin. That's the
instant.
coin that Jesus talked about in the Bible,
That's
and they're
right, and
available.
yeah, oh yeah, and very affordable. I have tons of
Amazing.
them. Very affordable. But to me, even if you spent $50 on a widow's mite and you got it in the mail, I think it probably would change your mind. I think it would probably get
For
you a
sure. I
level of
mean, I
interest.
can't go to dinner for less than $50 these days.
That's right.
Not in this country, anyway.
Yeah,
For sure. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add? Because I think it's great. Well, like I said, I'm going to put this in the show notes of how I'll have all the links. So, you could.
perfect.
Is the link to your podcast in your
Yep,
website?
yep, it
So I'll
is.
just put the
If you scroll,
website link, and you guys could look through the through the website to find all Dean's cool information.
all right.
Yeah.
Well,
So thanks for
well,
coming.
I appreciate it. I can't wait to do the next one.
Yeah.
I will be, there are a million different areas that we could talk about. One of my favorite areas is the Stephanophoric coins of late Hellenism, Philip V, Perseus. That's an area that I love because they had some of the best artwork in history on their coins in
Okay.
that time period. But I could tell you, I could talk about all of it. I
Yeah,
just
we'll
love it.
nerd out on coins. We'll be getting some coins. Let us know what you guys think, that you listeners. If you say Bernie, don't nerd out on coins, let me know. But I don't think you'll say that. But
That's
let us
right.
know what you think for sure. And yeah, check
Absolutely.
out his Dean's website. Check out our website. We don't have a website, but you could check out our Facebook page. You could check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/fan of history. Give up a couple bucks an episode to help us out. These What's
That's
New in
right.
History episodes are free, so if you're a Patreon, you get them included. And yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks, Dean. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it. I thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me blabber on
My
about
pleasure.
coins.
My
And I
pleasure.
look forward to the next time.
Absolutely. Cheers.